entitled Small Steps to a Big Voiceover Business in 2012. And first of all, I want to wish you a very happy holidays, whether you're celebrating Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it is you may be celebrating this time of year. I hope you and your family are doing very well and you're enjoying the time together. And also, I'm very aware of the fact that this is a busy time of year for many, many people. And the fact that you would set aside the time to be here tonight, I know is probably no small sacrifice on your part. So I will make you this promise, and that is that I will not waste your time. The information that I have is information that you can use and that you can implement, and that is actionable. So I am really looking forward to sharing it with you. As a matter of fact, I was blown away by the response, and there are so many people on the broadcast tonight, and not just from here in the United States, but literally around the world. There are those who are in the wee hours of the morning who have tuned in for this broadcast. So again, thank you for doing that. And there's a broad range of people, not just geographically, but in terms of professionally. A lot of the people who are watching tonight are new in the business or newer in the business, some who have been doing it for several years, and then we have a number of people who are well established in their careers, and people whose, if not their by name, you would certainly know them by voice or projects they've recorded. And it's all for one purpose, and that is to really bridge the gap between performance and making money in the voiceover business. And if there's one gap, if there's one problem, if there's one challenge that I deal with in consulting and working with voiceover talent, it's how do I take my talent and how do I monetize that and turn it into a profitable voiceover business. So that's exactly what we're here to talk about tonight, because the fact is, if you're not making money, if you're not profitable in your voiceover business, you don't have a voiceover business. What you have is a voiceover hobby. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your intent and that's your goal and it's something that you like to do on the side. But if you do this because you want to do it as a career, because you want to generate at least a part-time income, if not a full-time income or more, then again, if you're not profitable, if you're not making money, then it certainly is not a voiceover business. I want to talk about something that makes, actually I'm a little uncomfortable to talk about it at first, because I don't like to talk about my income, which may sound kind of weird, because I mean, I do promote the whole six-figure voiceover thing. But so I think, and I've told people this before, I think the first question that you need to ask a voiceover coach, if you want them to help you in building a voiceover business and creating an income, and that is, you need to ask them how much money they make. Because if your goal is simply to be a good performer, then I think those are the credentials that you need to look at. But if you're looking to build it as a business, again, if you're trying to bridge that gap between performance and making money in voiceover, I think you have a right to know the person that you're trusting to train you, to help you, to prepare you. You need to know that they are doing that, because it reminds me of the person that will come up to you with a new business opportunity and say, I can help you make a six-figure income, and you say to them, well, how much do you make? And they say, well, nothing yet. Well, it's kind of the same thing in the voiceover business. And so I just want to assure you that not only do I have a profitable voiceover business, but literally a thriving voiceover business. When I first started, and you may have heard my story before, I'll tell you more about that in a moment, but within 12 months of starting my voiceover business, I was consistently generating over $2,000 a week, which comes out to be just over $100,000 a year that I was generating. And my income has grown about 10% a year since then. And I was just calculating where I'm at for this year, for 2012, and of course we have several weeks left. And I will be right somewhere between, depending on what happens over the next few weeks, but somewhere between $145,000 and $150,000 for this year. Now, that's good, and I'm excited about that. And certainly, does that, am I making more money than anybody else in voiceover? No, not by a long shot. There are certainly people. There are seven-figure voice artists, and you could probably count them on your fingers and your toes, but there are certainly people, who make more money than that. But the point is not necessarily how much money you make, but it is, can you create it, can you build it, and can you sustain it? Not wondering from week to week, or from month to month, or from year to year, will I get enough work this year, or enough next month to pay my mortgage, or make my car payment, or to buy the groceries? Because, I mean, as a voice actor, if you've done this for any length of time, I'm sure that you've gone through the ups and the downs You know, when is my agent going to call me with an audition? I've auditioned 3 times this past month, and I haven't heard anything yet. Am I going to get the job? So the key, again, is not getting work. It's getting consistent work and enough work that you can create an income that is sustainable and that is dependable from week to week and month to month and from year to year. And the thing that I'm really excited about that I wanted to mention is not just how much or how well my business has done this year, but it's the fact that it has really, I mean, taken off, not just incrementally now, but really within the past quarter this year has grown exponentially. Over the past, I was just doing some calculations earlier today to figure out exactly where I'm at as I'm starting to close out 2012. And for the past 12 weeks, I've averaged $4,000 a week in income. So for the past 3 months, actually, technically just under $4,000, $3,989.50. So I'm $10.50 shy a week of hitting the $4,000 you know, a week. But the point is that it continues to grow. Now, if I sustain that income for this next year, you know, we're talking about that would put me in the $200,000 range for next year. And again, the only reason I tell you that, and I certainly don't mean that in any way, shape, or form to be a bragging statement, it's simply to let you know. Because people say, is there money to be made in voiceover? And so often you hear people say, oh no, or I know people that used to, but that, you know, you can't do it anymore. That is nonsense. You certainly can do it. You just simply need to know how to do it and how to go about doing it, which is why we are sitting here in the family room of the Dewey's house tonight so that we can share and talk a little bit about some simple steps, some small steps that you can take in this next year to make sure that your voiceover business takes a significant move forward. And by the way, a couple of things I wanted to mention. I want to thank you for the questions. Many of you have emailed ahead of time with questions, and I have a long list of questions. And I also wanted to let you know that there is a chat function, and I see that it's already being used. And if you have a comment or a question that you'd like to send my way, please feel free to do that. And what I will do here at the end of our time together, I will get to as many of those questions as I can. But I probably won't be addressing them as I'm going through the things that I really have planned that I think they're very important for you to know. But we're talking about income. Something else I wanted to mention, and it's one thing to bill work. It's another thing to actually collect the money. And my receivables, I have averaged over the past 3 years, believe it or not, 99.7% receivable. So not only do I bill it, but I actually get it in my hands. And I was asking my assistant today, it was actually my daughter, Mallory, to make copies of all of the checks or check stubs that come in this week. So these are my deposits for this week, and of course we still have tomorrow to go yet. But right now they are at just over $3,700. And just to show you that I'm not, you know, making this up, I don't know if you can see this very well or not, but we actually made some copies. That's kind of tough to see. These are check stubs and checks, and I'm showing this to you for 2 reasons. But $387.50, $110 on this one, $161.25 there. Here's a $250 check. I'm just going to go through these quickly. There's a $100 check, and by the way, I blacked out the client's name and information. Here's a $50 check. Here's $200. Here's $1,680. Here's $300, and here's $374. And $210. Now, why do I show you all this? Well, number one, again, it's to show you that I'm not making this up. This is not something that I just talk about. It's something I actually do on a day-to-day, a month-to-month, and a year-to-year basis. The other thing, and we'll talk more about this later, is I wanted you to get a sense of the variety in terms of the volume of work, and now as shown in the pay that I've received this past week. I mean, everything from a $50 check to a check for over $1,600. So there's a lot of diversity within the portfolio of work that I do on a week-to-week and a month-to-month basis. And I feel that's really important in building your business. And again, we'll address more of that here in just a couple of minutes. Before we get to the specifics of the small steps that you can take in 2012 to build your voiceover business, I wanted to talk a little bit about my story and why do I do what I do. Again, I think it's important you know a little bit about the person who's sharing their expertise, you know, where they're coming from and why is it they're qualified to say what they have to say, and what makes them maybe a little different, not necessarily better, but a little different maybe from somebody else who's offering the same kind of information. Well, first of all, I don't do this because I need the money. I make a comfortable living. Would I like to make more money? Sure, and my business is, providing that on an ongoing basis. It's not because I need the money, but the best way that I can explain it is I once heard, and I don't know who said this quote originally, but the quote was this: "We are not what we do. We do what we are." And I actually heard that from Morgan Freeman in the movie Along Came a Spider. I heard that and I never forgot it, because I thought, how true is that? Is that whoever you are, really at your core, will work its way out eventually. And you can try to cover it up, and you can try to do other things, and you can try to redirect your life in another direction. But the essence of who you are, and your passions, and what you're good at, really the things that I think God put you on earth to do, you do them because that is what you are. And eventually it will find a way to come out. And what I'm doing now is really part of who I am. And there's several facets to me. Who is Bill DeWeese? Well, I think one facet of me, and by the way, I mean, this is not something I just came up with last night. This is something I identified years ago. And I've really tried to stay true to these things that I feel really reflect who I am as a person and as a professional. And one is, I am a performer. And I knew that from a very young age, because it was about junior high that I was really struck with the idea of being on the radio. I wanted to be on a microphone. And I'm going to take a bet here and think there's probably a number of people that are watching this broadcast right now that were exactly the same way. And if so, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because once you were struck with that bug, all you wanted to do was to talk on a microphone. So I had a younger sister who had a little cassette recorder, and I would borrow her cassette recorder at every opportunity I could. And of course, I would pretend to be a disc jockey and a newscaster, and I was always recording myself. And I never lost that passion. And I followed that into my adolescence and teenage years, and I never lost that passion. Went to college, studied communications, and actually the college, I went to a small private college, didn't have a radio station. So I spearheaded a group of people that actually we went out and we got the license for the FCC, got the permission to create a radio station, and we actually were licensed during my student years in college to create a radio station, because that was my passion. That's what I wanted to do. And from there I went on to pursue a career in radio, where I was a radio personality and a program director and a manager as well. And one of the things that I identified, or another area, facet of my personality that I identified during that time, was that I was a coach and mentor. And at age, well, early on in my career, I was either 21 or 22, I was promoted to program director. And I remember how much I loved coaching and helping people develop their skills in terms of their performance and being being a radio personality. And for the next, well, I guess a couple decades, 25 years, off and on, was coaching and helping media talent, many of which today are working at radio stations and TV stations as reporters and news anchors and voiceover talent, all around the country. So, and people, especially, it seems like younger people at the radio stations I worked with, would really gravitate toward me and want to hang out and pick my brain for information, and maybe it was because I was an encourager as well as a coach, but I really realized that was a part of who I was, mentoring and coaching people, especially in the area of performance. And then later I was actually given the opportunity to teach media communications at a university here in the Chicago area, which is what brought our family here. And for 14 years, I taught as a college professor, and then I'm an MBA as well. And I taught in the MBA program, marketing and marketing management, and enjoyed not only helping kids who are really trying to develop and find their way and to decide their career path, but working with the professional adults who are trying to really further develop their career. And so that really went deep within me. I mean, the desire to not only to mentor and coach, but to educate. And I consider myself a lifelong learner. And then along the way, I also not only was teaching business, but worked as a marketing consultant within the music industry. and then and also helped start up a company in the late 90s. Actually left teaching for a year to start up a company, went back to teaching, came back later as the vice president of the company. It was a learning services company where we went into Fortune 500 companies like Colgate and Kellogg and Caterpillar, and we taught them how to train their employees for peak performance, creating these high performance learning environments. So along the way, I realized that I was a performer. I liked being behind the microphone. I realized that I had the talent and ability to be a coach and a mentor, and people gravitated me for that. That I was an educator, and that I was a marketer and a business person. And taking those skills and that experience and then putting it to work within the voiceover business it's been an incredible ride for these past few years, because really what I want to give you tonight, I want to give you a framework. I don't want to just give you information and say you need to do this, although I will give you some information that I think that you need to do. But I want to give you a framework to look at your business with, so that it will enable you, empower you to make decisions on an ongoing basis. One of the things I liked about college as opposed to high school was that up through high school it was pretty much rote memory. Your teachers, gave you information. You were expected to regurgitate that information on a quiz or on a test, and certainly that happened in college. But a lot of college was giving you models, ways to look at problems and look at situations. So if you understood the model and if you understood the principles and the laws behind it, you could make intelligent decisions and become a good problem solver. And that's what I would really like to help you do this evening, give you a framework as well as some very simple steps that you can take so that you can become a problem solver in 2012 in your voiceover business, so that you can be unlike the majority. Because believe me, and I'm sure I'm not telling you anything, I talk to voiceover talent daily, and most are really struggling in terms of being able to turn their voiceover business, as I said, into a real business, a profitable business. And part of that is going to begin tonight. I encourage you tonight to begin to think like a business person. Now, here's my disclaimer. What I'm about to share with you, this is for people who are more concerned about making money in their voiceover business than they are about achieving awards or peer recognition. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and if that is your goal, then by all means, I think you should pursue that and find somebody who can help you do that. But what I do is I've taken the marketing principles that I've learned and practiced really throughout my career as a radio station programmer. I remember my first radio station increasing ratings by 500, almost 500%. By taking a radio station I managed and increasing revenue by over 400%. The reason I could do those things is because I understood how to market, I understood how to identify an audience, and I understood how to grow audience and revenue because I understood the principles that underline that. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Now, if you're more interested, again, in achieving social currency through, being on your Facebook, voiceover groups and being kind of the high visibility person there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what this is about. And if you want to make money in voiceovers, and I assume that's and there's nothing wrong. If you're going to do something for a living, you might as well be profitable at it and be able to, pay your bills and support your family. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. And it begins by thinking like a business person. Most people in the voiceover business think like a voice actor, or they think like a performer. Now, there's nothing wrong with that when you're performing. But the problem is when you remain in that mode and you keep the acting hat on, meaning you keep that frame of reference, then you cannot make the decisions that will allow you to be profitable as a business. And I think that's, again, the gap between performance and making money. It's because, number one, many of us don't know the marketing principles or strategies to jump that gap. And it's because, again, many of us are actors, we're performers. What I want to do is bring to you the aspect of the marketing so you can begin to make choices that will allow you to move your business forward. And I want you to keep this in mind. It's all about return on investment. I want you to think about making choices and decisions. And again, I'll give you some specifics that will bring a return on your time, because time obviously is the most valuable commodity that we have. on your talent, and on the money that you spend. Because if you are in the voiceover business, and any business, it requires a certain amount of capital, whether that's most of that in equipment and studio equipment, and then if you decide to do marketing outside of that, some of that is involved too. And it doesn't take a lot of money to start a voiceover business, but you want to make sure that where you're putting your time and where you are putting your money and where you're putting your talents and submitting your auditions and submitting your demos is getting you the highest return on investment. So, with that in mind, are you ready? All right, here we go. I want to talk to you about the 10 rules of the voiceover game. One of the reasons I was a successful radio station programmer and could substantially increase radio station audience sizes was because I understood the rules of ratings. In radio, the way that a radio station becomes profitable is much like any other business. They have a good or a service to sell. In this case, ultimately, their good, their service that they sell is advertising to advertisers. That's where the money comes from. The money doesn't come ultimately from the listeners. It comes from the advertisers. But the way you get money from advertisers and what helps to determine the rate of your commercials is the size of your listening audience. Well, if you want to win that game, you have to understand how Arbitron measures audience size. And some of those of you who have been in radio, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And there are certain methodologies that are used by Arbitron. And that it's not so much about real audience, actual audience, it's about, or actual listening, it's about perceived listening. And there are ways to allow yourself to ingrain yourself in the minds of your listeners and to create the perception that you are their favorite, or you're the radio station they listen to more than other radio stations, and you have to know how how Arbitron surveys the people that they ask, and I won't bore you with all of those details, but the point was I understood the rules of the game. Now there are rules to the game in the voiceover business, which, by the way, are pretty much the same rules of the game for business in general. That's why I was able to take that framework that had made me successful in these other areas, and I could bring it into the voiceover business and essentially lay that same template over my voiceover business to allow me to put the pieces of the puzzle together, which really actually was quite simple. Once I understood marketing, I could easily apply it to the voiceover business and then see very rapid growth there. So we're going to talk about the 10 rules of the game. And within each of those rules, we'll talk about some specific, simple steps that you can take, because at the end of the day, it's not about you creating some elaborate 150-page business plan, with your SWOT analysis, your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats, and and your pro forma statements. It's really and by the way, like I understand all of that, and I've done all of that in my past life. My business plan is very simple and straightforward in the voiceover business, and I don't have a document to show you. There are things that I know I need to do on a day-to-day basis that are not complicated, and I do them consistently. So let's talk about some things that you need to know and some things that you can do consistently to be successful. The first rule of the voiceover game is this: product precedes marketing. Product precedes marketing. The fastest way to kill your business any business is to market a product that's not ready to go to market. You can have the most brilliant marketing strategy. You can have the greatest business plan. But if your product is bad, and if it's not ready to go to market, you don't stand a chance. And it's the same thing in the voiceover business. Now, I am not here to tell you that everybody who is not successful in voiceover, the biggest problem is, I'm not saying that it's strictly because of marketing. In some cases, it goes beyond. That's almost always a component of it. But you have to have the raw ability. And by the way, if you don't know whether you do or not, it's best to have that evaluated by a professional, and that's something I do work with voiceover talent in doing, and we'll talk more about that later. This is not a this is not a 60-minute pitch, but I will talk about opportunities to work more closely or to go more in depth in working with me in building your voiceover business. And by the way, if you have to go off the broadcast early, you can always email me for more information at voiceoverexpert@gmail.com. But you have to have at least a basic skill set. Now, I think there is the misnomer among many people that you have to be world-class, network quality to be competitive. Well, now, if you're competing for a network, the network promo job, or to do movie trailers, you certainly do. But there's a lot of voiceover work that's done in smaller and medium markets that you certainly need to be good, but you don't have to train for 3 to 5 years to be prepared for that. So the first thing is this: training. Make sure you get professional training. And if you're not sure whether you're competitive, that probably means that you need to at least be assessed. And you probably do need a certain degree of training. So it begins with that. So here's a small step for you in 2012. Make an appointment with a trained professional to at least do an assessment to find out where you're at and where you need to be, so you can determine the gap, to figure out a plan to get from where you are to where you need to be competitive to go to market. Because if you don't have that, then you really don't have anything. So that's number one. The other thing, another small step under the area of preparing your product before going to market, is making sure that you have the proper studio. Now, I mean, that's an hour or two discussion in and of itself, so we won't be able to get into all the particulars of that in our time together tonight. But you can, if you're already up and doing this, you can certainly, I would suggest that you at least reevaluate your sound chain, meaning everything from your microphone, beginning with your microphone and the space that you record in, into your digital audio workstation. And that's my simple step for 2012. I wanted to reevaluate my sound and my sound chain. And I recently moved, and I mentioned this in a recent video, but I moved my studio downstairs I was upstairs in the bedroom closet, and I secured one of the kids' old bedrooms downstairs. My kids are, they're grown up, and 2 of the 3 have moved out. But I was able to take over one of those rooms downstairs, convert it into an office/studio, and put my whisper room there. And decided to upgrade my sound card and just double check all of my cords and connections, and recheck. I use an Aphex 230 vocal processing strip. And I did some research, and I went back and just reevaluated all of the settings on that. And interestingly enough, yesterday I did a project for a client, and he called me and he said, "Hey," he said, "this sounds really great." He said, "What's your sound chain?" Because he was thinking about doing some upgrades to his studio, and he wanted to compare what he was doing to what I was doing. So it made me feel good that what I did actually had an immediate payoff. But it is a competitive market, so make sure that you're properly trained. Make sure that your studio is up to snuff. And again, that might mean that you have a professional do an assessment of the sound of your studio for you. Because believe me, if you don't, your prospective clients will be. And they may not tell you what they think, but they will certainly be comparing and analyzing it against others that they get in. Another aspect of that is your demo. Once you are ready to go to market, you need a world-class demo. I highly recommend self-producing your demo. Now, if you've been in radio for a while now, and again, radio and voiceover, it's really 2 different. Just because you worked in radio, don't get the mistaken idea that it's going to be an easy transition into voiceovers. In some ways, it does help. At least you're not afraid of a microphone. But we tend to do things in radio and develop habits in radio that really don't translate well into the voiceover world. So there is some adjustment there. But and if you have a strong producing background, you might be able to get away with some of that. But I strongly recommend, especially if you're getting started, pay to have a professional prepare you and to record your demo. The reason is this: your demo is your #1 marketing tool. Most of whether a prospective client decides to even pay any attention to you will be based on the strength of your demo. So reassess your demo for 2012. You may need to record a new one. Small step to assess it, bigger step to pay the money up. I understand that. But don't think that you can go out and get good work without having a good demo. Product precedes marketing. And the other thing is, make sure that you have a website. I can appreciate the fact that if you're on voice123.com or voices.com that you have a page dedicated, on there to yourself with your demos. But that should not be your primary website. And I see that a lot. I'm contacted by a lot of voice talent. The first thing I do is I go to check out your website and listen to your demo. And if I have to go to voices.com and voice123.com, and by the way, this is nothing against those services at all. I'm just saying, if you use that as your primary voiceover or your primary website, what it tells me is that you really haven't made a full commitment to your voiceover business for whatever reason, which makes me think that you're probably not top caliber professional because you don't have your own dedicated website. Also, Why would you want to send me to a website where there are tens of thousands of other talent to choose from? So I'm going to listen to your demo, and then I realize, oh my gosh, there's 50,000 other people on here I could listen to. Why am I just focusing on Susan's demo when I could be listening to hundreds, if not thousands of others? So get your own dedicated website that you can at least send prospective clients to view or to listen to your demos. And there's a whole conversation that we could get into with websites, but let me just say this. Clean, professional, easy to navigate, with a focus on your demos. Because again, your demo is your number one. It is your lead marketing tool. All right, let's move on to rule number 2. I call this my 90-10 rule, and there are a couple of aspects of the 90-10 rule. And the first one is this. If you look at the voiceover pie, the market, the prospective and potential work in the marketplace, most people focus on the stuff that we immediately think of when we think of voiceovers. We think of things like animation. We think of network television commercials. We think of movie trailers. We think of higher profile, typically better paying voiceover work, and for good reason, maybe because those are top of mind. Those are the things that we see and that we hear, on a regular basis. But here's the thing. That only accounts for about 10% of the marketplace. 90% of the marketplace, of the voiceover pie, consists in smaller to medium market radio and television ads, as well as non-broadcast work. Things like corporate narration. And nowadays, everybody's a media producer. Everybody's got a YouTube channel. It's easy to do in-house video for, from everything from small to larger companies. So the opportunities to put voiceover to video, for instance, they're enormous, and that would account for up to 90% of the marketplace. Yet most people are competing for the 10%. Again, it's better paying. I understand that. But, and certainly you should, if your goal is to be the next NBC promo voice, then by all means you should pursue that. But if that is your plan, if that's your business plan, that's no better than playing the lottery. You may or you may not get it, and again, I may go for it. But in the meantime, doesn't it make sense to have a sustainable business plan that will allow you to make a steady and growing and sizable income over time? If I decide to be an actor tomorrow, I could say, my plan is to be, I want to be the next George Clooney. Admirable. And who knows? Maybe, maybe I could achieve that. And certainly no reason for me not to pursue that. But that's an awful business plan. Again, I'm playing the lottery. I may get it. Chances are I won't. It could happen, but in the meantime, wouldn't it make sense for me to do some other, have another a business plan to where I can do acting jobs that will allow me to create assistant and steady income if those opportunities are available, which they are in the voiceover business. So here's your small step for 2012. Focus more of your attention on the 90% of the pie. Audiobooks, corporate narration. There's a lot of corporate narration work out there. Small and medium size, small and medium markets when it comes to radio and television. And here's a trend, and we'll be talking about trends here in a few minutes, but a lot of this work for like cable TV channels, or I'm sorry, commercials, and for smaller to medium sized market radio commercials are being outsourced to production houses. And let them do the work for you. And I talked about earlier ROI, return on investment, and you could spend a lot of time, trying to contact radio stations individually. And you might have some success doing that, but what I'm proposing to you is that your best use of time is to find production companies that specialize in creating commercials for these small and medium-sized market radio stations and TV stations. And I've got a bunch of them that I do work for because I have a large portfolio of clients that I built, and that's part of my business model. It's volume, which smooths out. My income, besides the fact that it's growing, it's very predictable. Amazingly so. I would have never guessed that if you were to look at my income on a graph, that would it be as smooth and even, trending up as it is. But it is, and it's because I've diversified my portfolio. It's like a mutual fund. It's not like buying one stock and hoping and praying and keeping my fingers crossed that it hits and that it hits big, or it's not like playing the lottery. Okay, I think I've beat that dead horse long enough. 90-10 rule. And here's the other thing, and that is early on in your career, you're going to be spending 90% of your time approximately marketing, 10% recording. Just you have to be realistic. Coming out of the gate, you're not going to be spending most of your time recording. You're going to be out. You're going to be out getting work, and that means making the phone calls. That means sending the emails. We can talk more about the specifics of that later. But the important thing is to realize that it takes a lot of work up front. You've got to build momentum. But what happens, and here's the good news, is that over time, that 90 to 10 shifts, so that you're doing less and less marketing, and you're doing more and more recording. So that eventually, that 90-10 will be, and it might take a few years to do this, but 90% of your time will be spent recording, 10% marketing. Right now, I would say more than 99% of my time is spent recording. I do very, very little marketing right now. Now, do I stop marketing altogether? No, I dare not do that, because I've got all these plates spinning. Now, it's the hard part was getting them all spinning. Now I just got to keep them spinning, which means I need to occasionally do this, occasionally do that, and more for me now it's more about staying in touch and cultivating relationships with my current clients, not as much about getting new clients. So rule number 2, 90-10 with some small steps. Okay, rule number 3. This is a big one. It is a global marketplace. This is something that I consistently notice that voiceover talent that I talk with just don't get. They're not thinking about it, and that is most people tend to think of their market as their market. For instance, if I'm in Chicago, as a matter of fact, I have a good friend who's he's a full-time voiceover talent, and when he found out this is what I was doing for a living as well, and he's from another state, and we used to work together years and years ago. And he said he was talking specifically about the Chicago market. Well, that must be a tough market, or this and that about the market. I am not a Chicago talent. I am a global talent. I am a global marketer. I have literally done recording sessions for clients in Chicago that didn't even know that I lived in the Chicago area, because I was recording from my own studio, be it by ISDN or just on my own. Most of my clients have no idea where I live, nor do they care. It is a global marketplace. Your studio is in your home. It doesn't matter whether you're in Timbuktu, or Dubuque, Dallas, Chicago, New York, or wherever. It does not matter. Large market, small market, medium market. It's a global marketplace. So market yourself globally. And here's a good exercise for you. Google your name. If you are a voice talent, and you've got some clients and you're doing work, Google your name to see where your name pops up. I did this earlier this week because I always think it's interesting. Well, I don't think it's just interesting to see where your name might pop up, but I always like to see, because a lot of the companies that I do work with, a lot of the voice talent rosters, a lot of the agencies that I'm with, there'll be pages and pages of this stuff with my name. So it's interesting because I get clients all over the world. I regularly do work for, gosh, China, India. You name it. Brazil, everywhere, as well as a lot here in the United States. So if you're limiting yourself to your regional market, number one, there's no reason to, and number two, you're eliminating so much of the potential pie. It is a global marketplace. Now, one of the tools, and here's a small step for you at least to think about in 2012, and it may not be time for you to do this yet, but think about ISDN. And time does not permit us to go into deep detail about ISDN, but ISDN, very briefly, is a high-speed data line, and it allows you to connect remotely with other recording studios. The beauty of ISDN, and by the way, it is an investment. It cost, I'm trying to remember, I set mine up between 3 and 4 years ago. I know it was hundreds of dollars to get the service up and rolling. AT&T who provides it in my area, but it cost me $45 a month is the monthly service charge, and then a couple bucks a month for line. So, but what it does, it opens you up to more jobs with recording studios who only work remotely with ISDN talent. For instance, today I received an email from a client. It's a studio that works only with ISDN talent in Baltimore, and it was an audition for, and it's under a non-disclosure agreement, so I cannot tell you who, but it was a really big deal. And I could tell that this was not one of those cattle calls where you get an audition from your agent, and you know that like 2,000 other people all around the country got the same thing. This was a very small casting, but it's a really big job and it's a really big client. The only reason I was even considered, aside from hopefully whatever talent I would have to offer, would be the fact that my studio is ISDN equipped, which means they can dial me up and I can do a session, whether they're in New York, whether they're in LA or Dallas, or it doesn't matter. It's funny. Well, it's not actually funny, but just to show you the importance of having ISDN. As time has gone by, and my clients, my ISDN clients were fewer and far between early on. Within the past year, it's really picked up a lot. I think people get to know you, they trust you, they know you can do a good job, so they call on you more and more. And I received a call from a client that said, "Hey, the PGA Tour wants to use you to do a TV commercial for the Golf Channel." And I was so excited. Problem was, I had an ISDN problem. And it's such an antiquated technology. I mean, the phone companies still, they don't support it in all markets now. It's disappearing, but it's what the recording industry uses. So it's, what you have to have. And I still have, after 2 or 3 weeks, have not identified what that problem was. Long story short, I lost that job for that commercial for the PGA for the Golf Channel, which still breaks my heart when I think about it, because I am a huge golf fan, and just to be associated with the PGA and be on Golf Channel, it was a big deal. But the only reason, my point is, the only reason that opened up was because of ISDN. You want to do that when you know you're competitive at a certain level, where you can compete more on a national level. And again, working with a professional can help you assess and determine if that's where you're at. It also allows you the opportunity to be represented by agents outside of your marketplace. Last count, I had, I believe it's 16 agents. And I just learned about my 16th this week. I was talking to you about doing a Google search. I Googled my name a couple of days ago, and my name popped up under an agency in Houston that I didn't even know I was represented by. I mean, how weird is that? Now, most agencies actually have you, they will give you a contract, and you're locked into a deal where you won't sign with any other agents within that area. And I'm sure I did submit my material to them, because I've submitted my material to everybody. At least it feels like everybody on the face of the planet. But again, that's part of my marketing plan. It's it's high volume. And apparently they liked it, and they put it on their website, but they didn't even tell me about it. So, whether I hadn't gotten work out of it, haven't even received an audition, but you never know. Okay, let's move on to rule number 4. Speaking of the 10 rules of the voiceover business, and that is this: market determines price. Get a lot of questions about price. What should I charge for this? I have this project, the client's offering this. Should I take it? With my background in business, and I'm more of a marketing expert than I am a finance or economics expert, but I've spent enough time in the classroom on both sides, as the teacher and as the student, to understand that the market ultimately determines price. Now, does that mean that you're a victim and you have no control? No. I mean, you can certainly set whatever price you want, but ultimately the client determines whether you are enough of a value to purchase at your price. So granted, it's very tough in the voiceover business. And I hear people, and there may be those on this call, and I certainly don't mean to offend you, that say that newcomers in the voiceover business and those who are lowballing the prices, they're killing the industry. Nothing could be further from the truth. Absolutely not. That's the mentality. That's more of a union mentality, which. And I think there's a time and a place for that. But within the voiceover marketplace, I really think it's in large part, it's an outdated notion, because people are too easily accessible. Now, it's hard to bring people together to coordinate and control the marketplace like that. It's a false control of the market. You really can't do it to any great degree, because there's always going to be somebody who's qualified, who will do it for less, who has the capability to deliver it quickly and for a low price. Now, that being said, people will always pay. They will pay for value, and they will pay for quality. So there's a place for everybody at the table. And chances are, when you come into the marketplace, you'll probably start with a lower rate structure, and you will work your way up the food chain, as you go. And then you'll probably drop off some of the lower work as you go. And that's certainly, I mean, that's been my business model. So you don't need to worry about you're hurting the marketplace. What you need to do is you need to focus on your business and what works best for you and the client. And with, I don't know if you heard that or not. That was that, by the way, is a real fire. That is not a gas fire and someone's logs fell. But we're okay here. Okay at the Dewey's household. Talking about the marketplace and prices, there are so many different scenarios, and there are so many different clients. There are so many different budgets, and one size does not fit all. It simply doesn't. I may do a $50 narration for a client that if it was for another client, and it was for a bigger client, the usage was different, it was reaching more people, I might get $400 for it. So how do you determine that? And that's, and so here's your small step for next year. If you have not yet, put together a rate sheet. That's a good thing to have, because when people ask for my rate sheet, and people will ask for yours, you need to have something. The way I determined mine was by researching the marketplace. And I'm not going to go through the particulars of it, but you can research the marketplace and at least come up with a good, solid, rate sheet that you feel is competitive for where you're at within your voiceover career. And when somebody insists on my voiceover or on my rate sheet, I will give it to them and say, this is my standard rate when I'm working with production houses and with casting agents. Now, if your budget's different, let me know. So what I try to do, and here's the takeaway here, I always try to allow the client to tell me where they're at first. It's letting them show their hand first. And it's not to be manipulative, but it's to find out where they're at, because again, every client, every budget is so different. It's ridiculous. I mean, it really is all over the place. So let's say you're a company, you're wanting to produce an in-house, say a 3-minute video. And they'll say, well, how much would you charge for this? My first question is, what is your budget for this project, for the voiceover? And then that's where I work from, because in my mind, I might think, well, these guys are really small. They probably can't afford more than, say, $150. Well, they may have budgeted $300 for that. I don't know. Or they may have budgeted, it's a smaller company with a very small marketing budget. They may have a $50. I mean, I just don't know. So the market will determine the price. And the best thing that you can do is to, whenever possible, get the prospective client or the client to lead with what their budget is. If you don't want to work with it, then don't. I mean, that's the beauty of a capitalistic market and a free market. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. If you feel it's too low, don't be insulted. Just walk away and leave it for somebody else. But one of the things that I really propose, and here is your small step for 2012, I want to strongly encourage you to develop the mindset of dollars per day and not dollars per project. In other words, instead of focusing on how much can I get for this project, how much is this job worth, think in terms of what is my daily goal, and then working back from that. When I first started my voiceover business, and I had been laid off from my corporate job, and so it was a situation where I was, and I shouldn't say laid off, I was downsized. Actually, I went to like part-time, and that just wasn't cutting it, with the mortgage to pay and my family to take care of. So my goal was, I thought, if I can get $200 a day, if I can just consistently make that, then I think I can, I can launch out, I can do this full time, and then I can grow it from there. And so I wasn't worried so much about how much I was being paid per job. My goal was to get $200 in work a day. I didn't care if I was doing 10, small market radio stations for $20 a pop, or whether I got one $200 narration. I could care less. I just wanted to make $200 a day. Well, what I did was I filled my, my basket, my inbox, my daily workload with work that got me to $200 a day. What did I do after that? Well, then I raised the bar a little bit. Okay, well, let's go for $300 a day. Well, it didn't take long. I was marketing myself in such a way and getting clients and getting the work that allowed me to make that much money a day, and so on and so forth. Now my daily goal, what I'm asking myself, is how can I make $1,000 a day? And within these past 12 weeks, as I mentioned, the last quarter of this year, I'm making about $4,000 a week. So I'm coming very, very close to hitting that. And now for 2012, I will raise the bar just a bit more. But what that means is Okay, now I'm getting bigger clients that are paying more money, so I can drop off some of the lower paying clients. Because at some point you got to let go of something. And I'll be honest with you, I hold on to as much as I can. I'm very slow at letting go, because it's like, you don't ever want to go back to when before you started wondering if you could ever get work. And it's funny, because I don't think it matters how long you do this. You always wonder, well, am I going to get work the next day? And after a while it becomes ridiculous, because you do. There's never, there's not a day I haven't had work in 5 years. It just, once you have enough clients, it comes in every day and every day and every day. But for this next year, 2012, make the small shift in your thinking. How much money do you want to make a day, as opposed to how much can you get per job? Fill your day with enough work to make that amount, whatever it may be. I'm not telling you need to set a specific number. You need to decide what it is for you, and then grow from there. Rule number 5. And I'm still in rule number 1, aren't I, on my PowerPoint? Okay, I got so excited and carried away here, I'm not keeping it up. Okay, here we go. Rule number 5. And I've alluded to this, but let me hit it briefly once more. High volume. It is a numbers game. Don't play the lottery. By playing the lottery, meaning, and I've spoken with a number of talent, very, world-class talent, who used to get work through their agents, and now, it comes once in a blue moon for the audition. And then it's a question of, do they actually get the job or not, after they've auditioned. That, to me, is playing the lottery. And again, it's not a bad game to play, because you might get it. And if you get it, it might be a client that ends up using you for a long period of time. You might make a lot of money. But the chances of that aren't nearly as good as if you build a larger book of business, a portfolio of clients that come to you on a day in and day out basis. So I look at it, it's kind of like a pyramid of clients, like inverted, being the base at the top and going down like this. And at the top, I have a lot of clients, that are lower to mid-paying, but they do a volume of work with me. And these are people that I don't mind getting paid less for, because they pay me. I mean, they give me jobs regularly, and they pay me regularly, and they're a good source. They're a base. They build a good base for my business. And then there are, further down here, there are fewer people that I would say are more mid-range. And they don't call me every day. They don't call me every week, but every month or so, they have a pretty decent-sized job for me. And so that adds to my pay. And then here at the very bottom, I have people that contact me on rare occasion. And sometimes, not that they're all huge jobs, but sometimes they're really big. Like, for instance, I got a call this week from a client, and actually this was through an agency, and I don't get a lot of work through agencies. As a matter of fact, I would say less than 1% of my annual income comes through my 16 agents. But this is a client I did work for years ago. I did a campaign for the Cincinnati Auto Show, radio and TV ads, as well as a car dealership there in Cincinnati. And so, but I haven't heard from them in a couple years. So, I think like all performers, my thought is, oh, they must not have liked me. They haven't called me back. And oftentimes that has nothing to do with anything. Well, I get a call out of nowhere this week, and they want me to record all of the radio and TV ads, and there are, I think, at least 3 TV ads, and I don't know how many radio ads, for the Cincinnati Boat Show that's coming up. And that will be a good payday for me. As a matter of fact, I record those spots tomorrow. But they're one that I may hear from once every couple of years. But when I get it, it's a good payoff. But it's a numbers game. If you're always waiting around for the big payday, 2 things. Number one, you probably won't, you may get paid big on the job, on that one job, but when you average it, you may get one big commercial job that pays $20,000 for the campaign, but can you live on that for the rest of the year? So make sure that you have enough going on, enough work going on to smooth out the bumps, so you have a consistent and a generous income. All right, let's take a look at rule number 6, which is this. Get in front of your audience. As simple as it is, this is one of the most basic rules of marketing. You got to find out who your audience is, and then you've got to get in front of them. And so here's some small steps that you can take for this next year. Identify, number 1, who is your audience. And I've given you some possibilities. Like for me, I like to work with the high volume production houses, companies that specialize in making radio and TV ads for small and medium sized markets, because there's a lot of work and it comes on a regular basis. And it may not pay really huge dollars per job, but I get a lot of work from them on a consistent basis. Your audience might be agencies, and I certainly don't recommend against getting an agent. And every opportunity you have to audition, you know, is a good one. So how do you get in front? And video production houses, that's another big one, by the way, because video production houses, there's a lot of them. Small, medium, and large size. They do TV ads, they do corporate type video, they do e-learning, online learning, they do all kinds of stuff, and typically need a lot of help from voiceover talent. So how do you get in front of them? Well, for me, it's very simple. And here's some small steps for you for 2012. And that is, I do a lot of emailing. I do cold emailing. I will identify people that I think would be good prospective clients, and I simply contact them and say, normally my message is very simple. I say who I am, what I do. I let them know that I'm a credible talent. I do this. I'm a full-time voiceover talent. I list some of my credits, which, by the way, I didn't have when I first started. So it's okay. You can do this without having credits. But now, you know, I can say American Express and Purina and Pepsi and so on and so forth. So that helps to build my case. But then most importantly, I direct them to my website, which we talked about earlier, which has my demo, which is my #1 marketing tool, BillDeWeese.com. And I have great confidence that when they go there, that I may not get the work, but I know that I can be competitive at that point. So I do emails. I do phone calls. Sometimes I do both, depending on who the client is or prospective client is, and how I think and how much I want their business, and how good of a fit I think they might be with the kind of work that I feel that I do best. But let's talk about cold calling for a minute, because this might be one of the simple steps. Now, in your mind, you may be thinking, cold calling, that is a huge step. Let me demystify this for you just a little bit. And I come from a business and a sales and a marketing background, as well as media and education. And I helped put myself through college by selling books, Bibles in particular, door to door, for a company out of Nashville called the Southwest Company. And what they do, and I think they still do this to this day, but they recruit college kids, and they send them off far from home someplace with people they don't know. I mean, other kids from around the country. You don't know who they're going to team you up with. And they say, this is your territory. And you go there and you find a place to live. And for 13 and a half hours a day, from 8 in the morning until 9:30 at night, I knocked on doors by myself. That's what we all did, selling Bibles. Now, that is therapy that will get you over that fear really, really fast. But I want to tell you that it's not nearly that difficult doing cold calls for voiceovers. The reason being, most of the people you call actually need voiceover talent. They are keeping their eyes open for good voiceover talent. And I say this in all honesty, I have not come across any resistance when making cold calls for my voiceover business over the past 5 years. And I've called a lot of people. The worst that it's been is we're not looking for talent right now, but thank you for calling. And that, for me, that's not rejection. And maybe that would tear you up. I don't know. And maybe you just need to face a little bit of rejection to get toughened up a little bit too. That might be part of the equation for you. But most people have been very receptive to listening to my demo. And when you do cold calling, here's a tip for you. Make sure that you're very focused. All you want is for them to agree to listen to your demo. That's your objective, period. If they like it, they'll keep you in mind. If they don't, fine, you move on. I have a tool called the Voiceover Playbook. Voiceoverplaybook.com is the website. It's like a 4-hour in-depth tutorial on it's actually a business plan on how to actually execute all of this stuff I'm talking about in your voiceover business. And in that voiceover playbook, I decided that I needed to put, instead of telling people what to do, I needed to show them. So I actually recorded cold calls. And I just recorded 3 calls in a row. I just randomly selected some, I think these were all video production companies. I just called them all up. And the funny thing was, I actually landed one of those 3 as a client. Sometimes the odds are not that good. You might have to make 5 calls. You might have to make 10 calls. You might have to make 100 calls. But who cares? Once you get somebody as a client, they are a client. And you want to get in front of as many people as you can. Rule number 7 is simply this. And let's see here. Here we go. You want to get in front of the curve. One of the reasons that I enjoy marketing so much is I really like to look forward, and I like to see what's coming down the pipe. See, I believe one of the big challenges with the voiceover industry in general is that, and one of the reasons a lot of people, most people aren't making very much money, is because they're working with outdated business models. The principles of marketing and business stay the same, but the models change because the markets change. Earlier today I was reading about the encyclopedia industry. It's funny, it wasn't that long ago that Encyclopedia Britannica was a really big deal. And if you wanted, good in-depth information, and if you wanted to make sure, you could support your kids in school so they could do their research papers, you needed Encyclopedia Britannica, or at least live close to a library where you could send your kids to access that. Well, today, I don't even know if they're in business anymore. Where do you go? You go Wikipedia. You want to know something? You can say, you can Google it, or Wikipedia has become the encyclopedia of choice. And you can be Encyclopedia Britannica and yell all you want and say, hey, don't use Wikipedia, use us. But that page has been turned, and that bridge has been crossed, and nobody's going back to Encyclopedia Britannica. If you're a typewriter, you can yell and scream all you want to at the computer and say, hey, don't use the computer, use me, but that bridge has been crossed. The days of the typewriter are gone, except maybe for taking up some space in a museum someplace. But yet in the voiceover business, we keep promoting the same old, outdated business model. Get an agent, submit auditions, make sure you're on voicebank.net, and then audition, and then keep your fingers crossed, and if you're good enough, you'll get work. Well, it just doesn't work for most people. Now, I'm not saying you can't get work that way, but I'm saying if you want to create a sustainable business that gets you from week to week, from month to month, to year, that is an awful business model. But yet that's, it's what's promoted. And I understand, things change, and oftentimes we as people we don't understand. We don't understand the world has passed us by, and we're still living in the past, which I once heard it said that most people still, they dress in clothes and fix their hair the way that they remember themselves feeling the best about themselves, which tends to be like, right around 21 years of age. So most people kind of get stuck in that warp and thinking that, if they can just hold on to that, it's all good. Well, but it's obvious to everybody else that that person, is stuck in the 70s or in the 80s or whatever the case may be. In your voiceover business, don't get stuck in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s. What worked then does not work now. And you need to know what is coming, what the front of the curve is. So don't live in your rearview mirror in 2012. Take some small steps. And here's a couple things to keep in mind. And I mentioned one of these before, and that is a lot of the work now is going around the agencies. It used to all come through the agents. Some of it still does, and that's why it's good to have an agent or agencies. And if you get that work, typically it's better paying work, so there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But more and more, they're doing clients are doing an end around the agents, and they're going directly to the talent, or oftentimes also to production, recording studios that work directly with talent. I have seen national ads. I was cast for and booked a gig for, it was a Wii video game that I picked up through Craigslist. Just to give you an idea, the market is changing. And it's funny when you think about it that, you got a national ad that way? Yeah. I've got lots of work that way. And, or this national ad that I mentioned to you earlier that I did the audition for today, that came through a recording studio, not through an agent. So it's being pushed, just like in business in general, that stuff is being pushed down to the lowest levels, meaning us as voice talent. It's doing an end around, going around the agents, oftentimes even around the production companies, and coming straight to us. So that's one big trend. So make sure you're looking in places. I'm telling you, and a lot of people would disagree with me on this, but Craigslist is a place to look for work. Now, is it all great work? No. Are there a lot of flakes on there? Sure there are. There are everywhere. That's not the issue. You've got to, this is panning for gold. You pan through all the junk to get to the gold. Now, in my voiceover playbook that I mentioned earlier, I do go into great detail on exactly how you pan for gold with it, because there are ways to do it, which, again, we don't have time for. And I see it's already after 8 o'clock. By the way, I will get to your questions here momentarily. So make sure that you're positioning yourself to take advantage of that work by working directly with the production companies, by making sure that you're, by the way, I think Voice123.com and Voices.com are two good places to be, especially if you're just starting your business. Now, for me, it's not, I've got so many jobs coming in from so many different places. For me, that's not so critical. But if I was starting my business today, I would be getting work from them. Rule number 8. The back end is more important than the front end. The front end is getting the customer. And when you're first starting your business, that's what you're going to be focused on. You're going to be thinking, I need to get a customer, I need to get a client. It's all about getting a client, getting a client, getting a client. And it may take a lot of work, it may take a lot of phone calls, it may take a lot of auditions to get that client. But the value is not in that first job that you do with the client. The value is in keeping that customer or that client and getting work from them on an ongoing basis, so that you're not rebuilding the wheel, recreating the wheel every day. You're taking what you have and you build upon it. I have clients that I picked up when I first started, about 5 years ago, even off Voice123.com, that I have today, that I've made thousands, tens of thousands of dollars from, because I picked them up as a client. So I don't have to do that work again. Once I have them, and you have to do some work to keep them. And by the way, let me just say that here's a small step for you in 2012. Stay in touch with your clients. If you are not seen, you are not heard, you are not remembered. And I don't care how great they told you you were today, next week, next month, they will forget about you. Not because they don't like you, not because you're not good, but it's because they have 100 million other things going on, just like you do. And unless you stay top of mind, you will not get the call for that next job. So you need to find creative ways to stay in touch. I recommend, and this is general marketing wisdom holds, that you need at least 6 touches per year, meaning 6 communications or impressions per year. I like to make it closer to 12, and I do monthly touches with my clients, and I find other ways, whether it's during the holidays or other excuses, to stay in front of them, because that is how you build your business. It's not just going out and getting the client; it's keeping the client, keeping them happy, and keeping work coming your way. All right, the other thing that you need to do, the rule number 9, is make sure you get paid. As I mentioned, my collections over the past 3 years have averaged 99.7%. Honestly, when I looked at that number, I knew it was good, but I really don't, and I guess this probably shows part of my attitude toward it. I don't obsess over it. I don't freak out about it. I don't worry about it. I really don't. And I think that's been part of the reason that I've been successful in that area, and that is, I have this basic underlying belief, and I may be wrong or I may be right, but this belief serves me well, and that is that most people want to do the right thing, that they intend to do the right thing. They may not always do the right thing, but that their intentions are good. And they may be forgetful, they may lose their priorities, but I believe that most people want to do the right thing. So I treat my clients with that kind of respect from the very beginning. I'm never pounding on their door or calling them on the phone saying, "Where's my money?" I don't operate that way. But what I do is this: I treat my clients in the collection process like I do in the marketing process, and that is, if they're not seeing you, if they're not hearing from you, they forget about you. It works just the same in collections as it does in marketing. So I make sure that that I stay in touch with them, and I never accuse them. I never say, "Hey, where's my money?" It's never like that. But I invoice the first of every month. I should say, my daughter Mallory, who's my assistant, does it. Invoices the first of every month. And what we do is, when if somebody's late, we send them an email and say, "Here, I've attached your invoice. This is how much you owe. So in case you've misplaced it," I always assume that they've forgotten or they've misplaced it, and we stay in touch with them. And amazingly, and some people pay slow. I'm not saying that everybody pays in 30 days. I wish they did. And sometimes it takes a while, but we always get the money. And I can only think, since I've started my business, I can think of one client, and I can still remember this guy. I remember this guy's name and where he's at, that I think intentionally ripped me off. I think from the get-go, from the very beginning, I think it was his intention to rip me off. In 5 years, one guy, $200, I can live with that. In most other cases, in almost all other cases, these are people who have gone out of business. You know, it happens. It's a tough economy. And a lot of these video production houses who are depending on clients for, you know, the two things that get cut during a bad economy within business are marketing and training. Well, that's our bread and butter in voiceovers. I mean, you're doing commercials, or you're doing, you know, for me, e-learning. I do a ton of e-learning. So, you know, when it's tough for a lot of video production companies. And so I've had a number of them, I won't say a number, a handful that have just gone out of business. And I think, you know, they have the best intentions. You know, it just worked out that way. So if I'm making $150,000 a year and I'm not collecting 0.3%, can I live with that? Yeah, I can live with that. But make sure you get paid by staying in touch, treating your customers with respect, and simply staying in touch and reminding them. And if you're consistent and you're persistent in a nice and professional way, then you know, you'll get your money. You will get your money. You know, something just occurred to me that I didn't mention earlier that I want to mention quickly, and that is when I talked about rule number 7, getting in front of the curve, audiobooks. That's the big thing. That is, I think that is the hot growth market right now for the voiceover business. Audio books, and particularly because of Amazon.com and their new initiative, ACX, Audio Creative Exchange, I believe, ACX.com. And their goal is to take about 100,000 books are published every year. Only about 5,000 become audiobooks. Their goal is to take that 5,000 and to push it up as close to 100,000 a year as possible, which means the market for voiceover talent is growing. If you have not done it yet, and here's your small step for 2012, sign up for a free Amazon account. You can just use your Amazon login for ACX.com. And I don't do anything special with it. You know, if you were to go in there and look at, I think I have a couple of demos. My demos are simply samples of books that I've done. But I produce custom demos, and I booked, if I'm not mistaken, 6 of my first 8 auditions. And I quit auditioning just because I'm just too busy. I can't do anymore. But I've recorded 24 full-length audiobooks now. I just finished my 24th a couple weeks ago. And I've recorded 155 business audiobook summaries for a business book summary, executive summary company. So audiobooks have become a big part of what I do. And one of the reasons I'm excited about audiobooks, especially through ACX, because they have a royalty share agreement. I'm not worried now about the money on the front end so much because I've, you know, plenty. My cash flow is fine. That's not an issue. But what I want to do is create ongoing residual income on the back end. So that's one of the reasons I'm excited about audiobooks. And by the way, again, forgive the pitch, but I recently did a seminar. And I worked, working with people on how to develop the skills and the business savvy, and to be able to market themselves in the audiobook market. And that is I actually recorded that and have a video of that one-day seminar that's available at audiobooksuccess.com. Audiobooksuccess.com. Now, let's move on to our 10th rule of the voiceover industry, and that is you reap what you sow in time. It's all cause and effect. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Nothing happens in a vacuum. If you want something to grow, you've got to plant it. You've got to water it. And then you have to wait for it to grow. What happens so often is we plant it, we water it for a few days, and it's like, it's not growing. I must be doing something wrong, so we stop. Now, if you've made sure that you're doing all the right stuff, and it's not growing yet, then it's probably just a matter of time. When I first started my voiceover business, I signed up with Voice123.com, and I was submitting auditions like crazy. And I remember being very discouraged, thinking, you know, wondering if I was ever going to get a job. And it took me about 100 auditions until I got my first job. And it may take you 50, it may take you 500. But, again, that's not the point. The point is if you're doing the right stuff, and if you continue to compete and get your voice out there, all you have to do is pick up that one client, and then you cultivate and keep that client, and that is a client. And then you go out and you work for your second one, and you cultivate and you keep that one. And then on it goes. So remember that you do reap what you sow. So invest into your business this next year. Make sure by investing, meaning that your time, your talent, your resources are very carefully placed to get you the maximum return on your investment. So when you're making those phone calls, you're sending those emails, you're recording that demo, you're sending out that demo, you just keep on keeping on. And it will come back. The cause and effect, I mean, it's a principle, it's a rule. You can't break it. It does work. You plant, you water, you water, you water, you wait, and eventually, it starts to pop out of the ground. And then when that happens, then it just becomes a cycle of success where you just grow, it's an upward spiral from there. Sometimes you just need to see a result and know that what you're doing works. And once you see that, then you're motivated to keep on moving forward. So I know I've gone over my time, but I wanted to make sure that I gave you that framework, those 10 rules, those 10 principles that will allow you to problem solve as you look to grow your business in this next year, and to give you some actionable steps, some simple steps that you can use to grow your voiceover business. Now, I want to thank, a number of questions have come in online, and I printed out a bunch of them that were sent to me via email earlier, and I want to get to these in just a second, but I also want to, I know, and a number of you have asked me about, how can I work with you in a more, in-depth way in helping to grow my business, and I'll make this very brief, but there are some things that you can consider over this, this next year. And one is, I mentioned this earlier, Voiceover Playbook. Really, my Voiceover Playbook at voiceoverplaybook.com. It's a 4-hour video that is everything I talked about. It's that expanded. Not, it's more than just telling you what to do. It's actually showing you and demonstrating you and going in depth. Well, how do I work through Craigslist to find leads? How do I work through Mandy.com to find prospects? Who do I talk to? What do I say? What should my emails look like? The real in-depth, it's as if I'm sitting over your shoulder, kind of taking you, blow by blow through each day. And so, literally, I mean, that's my business plan. This is my business plan. This is what I've done day to day to grow my business. So that's something to keep in mind. The other is the audiobooks. Again, if you want to get to the front of the curve, audiobooks, I really think, are where it's at. And it should be, if not solely what you do, certainly a part of the work that you do. And the audiobook success is the full-day seminar where we cover everything from the market to performance to how to grow your business. Also, a couple things I have coming up. I'm doing an audiobook success weekend. One of the biggest bits of feedback that I received from this last group that I did the audiobook seminar with was, I wish this had been a 2-day event. And I agreed completely with them. It would have been more fun and more informative. I mean, there's just so much information. We could have spent more time working on, the reads, and I mean, everything that we could have done, we could have just spent more time doing it. Plus, in this audiobook success weekend, which is coming up February 4th and 5th, it will be in my home, in my studio. So I have a conference teaching area as well as my recording studio, but we were going to make this an 8-person max event. So this will be limited to the first 8 people, but you'll walk out with your audiobook demo as well, which again is your lead marketing tool. So something to put on the calendar. Then also coming up, due to popular demand, for those who want to go into an intensive workshop in developing a marketing plan for your business. And that is my voiceover marketing workshop, which is coming up April 21st and 22nd. That also will happen here at my home and in my studio. And we'll spend the weekend together going through all this stuff in great detail and hammering out your marketing plan, coaching you through everything that you need to do to make sure that your voiceover business moves forward. Also, I alluded to it on a video on YouTube the other day, and I was actually blown away by the response that I received, and that is, I'm opening up a very special program in 2012, but due to the fact that I do record for a living, and I mean, my day looks like I start at 8 in the morning, and I literally hit the studio, and I record pretty much all day until about 4 or 4:30 in the afternoon. I do break for lunch, but it's almost all recording now. Very little of anything else during the day, and my assistant, Mallory, is editing all of my audio and taking care of the bookkeeping and the billing and the invoicing and so on and so forth. So it's hard for me to do a whole lot of this other extra stuff, but like I said, we are not what we do what we are, and I am a teacher and I'm a coach, and I've committed to doing several events this next year, but I also want to work with 5, and I need to cap it at 5 individuals where I will do a 3-day one-on-one in-person workshop in my home. You can actually stay here. If you're not comfortable with that, you can get a hotel. It doesn't matter. But you come in on a Friday and work with me all day in my studio on Friday. Actually see the work day. So you actually see how we interact with clients, how we schedule, how the workflow goes, and the things that I do to allow myself to do the kind of volume of work that I do. And then we'll also have Saturday and Sunday in the evenings. We'll spend all day, all evening, eat all our meals together, just hang out, and talk through the business, through your business, and produce your demo. And also on the back end of that will be 1 year of coaching on the back end. And so it's a pretty comprehensive thing, but I've really wanted to do this for a while. where I can take a few select people that really are serious about taking their business to the next level and really want to invest in it and make it happen. So, and for those of you who've emailed me, I want to let you know that I'm going to get back, and if you're interested, simply email me here at voiceoverexpert@gmail.com. I will send out, my plan is to send out the specifics of that program tomorrow, so you can look through that, see if you think you might be a good candidate for that, and if so, that we can talk further. So, all right, let me move into these questions because there are a number of them. Okay, what kind of contract do you use with clients? Believe it or not, I do not use a contract with clients unless the client initiates it. If the client wants a contract, and I work with some Fortune 500 companies that do require me to sign a non-disclosure agreement, that require me to sign an agreement, and I'm glad to do that. But I never initiate that. I've never felt the need to, and you've probably picked up on that. Really reflects my personality and the way I approach my business. Typically, a contract says, you know, you're trying to that's your backup. You want to make sure you've got your back covered. You want to make sure that nobody can weasel out, you know, of your payment. I typically approach this, you know, as I think people intend to pay, and they do. So again, for me, it hasn't been an issue. Does that mean you need to do it that way? No, I mean, you have to do what you're comfortable with. And if you will lay awake at night worrying about it, then you need to, you know, have a contract. And you could talk to an attorney or, you know, other voiceover talent about what they use. But I do not. How much money do you require up front? I don't require anything up front. Am I shocking you with these answers? I really don't. I accept payment by PayPal and check, and I always tell the client whatever is most convenient for them. I really am I have a client-centric approach to this, and I try to make it as easy to work with me as possible. And you might say, well, as easy to rip off as possible. Well, like I said, I have a 99.7% collection rate, so I really don't feel like I'm being taken advantage of. I treat my clients well. Generally speaking, they treat me very well. We have a good relationship, and so I don't require anything up front. And like I said, it's working out fine for me. How much do you charge for pickups? Pickups meaning that for those of you who are a little newer to the business, you do a recording session, and then the client comes back and says, you know what, can you change this line, or can you change this paragraph, and we need you to do a slight modification. Typically speaking, I don't charge for pickups. I like to charge by the project. So because most of the clients I work with are working with a pretty tight budget. So let's say the project is a $250 project, and let's say it's a 2-page or 3-page narration. So that's the project. They come back to me and they say, you know, the client says they don't like this word. Can we change this word? Yeah, I'll change that. And that, it takes me 5 minutes. I send it back. It's no big deal. It's customer service. Now, if it goes beyond that, and we're talking like 2 or 3 sessions of pickups, then yeah, then I'll come up with a nominal fee. But generally speaking, I don't worry about that. Would you suggest having demos in all areas of voiceover, such as commercial, narration, imaging? Well, I think you should have those in the areas that you feel that you're good at. I have commercial, I have narration, I have imaging, which I do imaging for a few radio stations. I have a promo demo, TV promo. Oddly enough, I have done promo work. There was a Fox affiliate in North Carolina I did some work with for a while, but right now I have no promo clients, so I probably won't be updating that. Over time, I've figured out what demand is for me. I have an audiobook demo. I do a lot of commercials, do a lot of narration and e-learning. So you got to find out what your area is. If it's animation, if it's e-learning, whatever the case is, you should have a demo that matches your particular passion, your interest, and your skill set. I guess I would like you to go over how to use... Oh, okay. Somebody's wanting more in-depth information on like using Mandy.com. That is a complete tutorial in and of itself. Mandy.com, by the way, M-A-N-D-Y.com, is probably the world's largest directory of video production companies. I do have actually in my voiceover playbook at voiceoverplaybook.com, I do have a section in there, a tutorial where I go into depth how to actually identify companies within that, which is, I really don't have time to get into all of that now, but if you spend some time in Mandy, I mean, it's not hard to find video production companies. So if you spend a little time in there, again, you'll figure it out, at least enough to get you going and up and rolling. And again, if you want to go into more depth with that, my voiceover playbook has more information. I'd love to hear some of your success in audiobook work with ACX. Well, As I mentioned earlier, I've done, I think, 6 books with him. Like, of my first 8 auditions, I actually booked 6, which is unheard of. I've never done that before in anything. But again, that just speaks to the fact there's a big demand for audiobook narrators. So, whoa, I'm sorry, I jumped because I had a light fall over here. You know what that was? It was my dog. I have a 50-pound American Staffordshire Terrier. If you know anything about that breed, they are big and they are strong, and she just ran into something. Okay, and her name is Phoebe, by the way. Here's a question that I have. In order to market myself properly, would you suggest having demos in all areas? Okay, and we talked about that. Okay, so another question along that line. Let's see here. I'm sorry, I'm just going to skip through here. Some of this are like repeat questions. How do I approach a potential client in a way that doesn't sound needy or intrusive? Okay, yeah, I understand. First of all, don't worry about being intrusive. Again, as I mentioned earlier, these people are looking for good voiceover talent. So I have yet to talk to a person who was rude or acted like I was an imposition. And really, you approach it as if you're not needy. And if you feel needy, you simply be what you are, an actor. And you act like you're a professional, you act like you do this every day, and you act like you would appreciate the work, but you're certainly not begging for the work, and you position it as typically, I'll say something along the line, hi, I'm Bill DeWeese, I'm a full-time voiceover talent, and I was simply calling to find out, or maybe you can help me, I'm just calling to find out if you're accepting voiceover demo submissions from Voice Talent. That is the extent of my pitch. If they say yes, then I follow up and make sure I get it to them. And if that sounds oversimplified, it's because it's not complicated. It's really easy stuff. What are your thoughts on developing a website and placing some home-produced spots on the site? Don't put home-produced spots on the site. That's my thought on that. You want to make sure, going back to the idea that product precedes marketing. Again, that's why I'm really giving you this framework to really think through these questions and make sure that your actions align with the principles. And that is, your demo is a product. It's representing your final product, and you want to put your best foot forward. And rarely is that a self-produced, especially local homegrown spot. And when I go to somebody's website and I hear them doing a local, they work for maybe a radio station, and they're doing a local spot for Bob's, automotive used car tire shop and ice cream pavilion. That normally tells me, they're local small market. And maybe you are a local small market. Hey, we've all been at some point. That's not the issue. The point is positioning yourself as a player. And the way to do that is to find a professional voiceover demo producer to do that for you. And by the way, I am a demo producer. If you're interested in finding out more, simply email me. We can talk more. I'm curious if you use CRM, customer relationship management software, to keep track of your clients. Well, you know what? I've used ACT, which is a big CRM program. Especially with other jobs that I've done in the past, and I've used it for a while in my voiceover business, and I've used some other CRM software, and now I'm a Mac person, and there's a few programs there. But you know what? I've decided my needs are pretty simple. It doesn't have to be overly complex, and I just use Outlook. All of my database is in Outlook, and I have that backed up to a mobile me account in the cloud, so all of my contacts are there. My emails are my record of all of my correspondence. I keep it simple. I believe in keeping it simple as possible. And CRMs, and I experimented, and tried different programs and decided they just complicated my life. It was too much to keep up with. And the workflow, and if you ever happen to come in and work with me here, you'll see the workflow is fast and furious. The work comes in fast all day long. And to take the time to go back and fill out all that stuff in a CRM, it just would, there's no time for that. But it's all done by email, almost all of it, 99.9% of it's done by email, and I have a record of that in my email program, so that's really all that I need. What software would you recommend for your voiceover business? Okay, you're asking, is a Sonar X1 good? Speaking specifically of recording editing software. Here's the thing. Focus on the hardware. The software has to do more with features than audio quality, and people could argue whether one sounds better than the other, but really they're pretty much indistinguishable one from the other. I mean, I've worked with Pro Tools, Apple, Logic Pro, and I have Logic Pro, and I use it more I'm a musician, so I do some music stuff with that. But what I use for voiceovers is Adobe Audition. It has way more than I do demo production, and I do that with Adobe Audition. It's more than enough. And it's simply way more than enough than what I need with my with my voiceover work. So you just need an editing program that allows you to record, that accommodates your workflow. You should be able to record easily and edit easily. And in my case, edit quickly because I do a high volume of work. So if it accommodates your workflow and allows you to work quickly and easily, then I say go for it. Aside from that, focus more on the hardware. Have a good microphone, have a good preamp, have a good sound card, and a good computer that you're recording into. Oh, let's see here. I think I hit all of those, and I know a number of questions have been coming out. Oh, there's a bunch of them here, and you know what? I realize there's way more than I'm going to get to tonight. So let's see here. I love the fact that you're talking about being a global talent. I'd love to hear more about international clients and how to go about finding them. Okay, Kelly, good question. I find them the way I find everybody else, and that is through like for instance, I have a client in China, and I get work from them probably 3 or 4 times a week, and they've become a pretty good source of income for me. The way I found them was simply by I was Googling. I was looking for production companies, and I came across this Chinese production company. And I noticed that one of the names, it was like an English-speaking gentleman worked at the company. And it was actually several years ago, and I don't remember specifically what I saw, but it caught my attention. And I thought, well, this is somebody at least speaks my language I can communicate with. I contacted them. About a year later, they got back in touch with me, and now I do work with them on a regular, ongoing basis. So, and that was just through, again, Googling, looking for audio production companies. So it's as simple as that. And again, I don't mean to make it, it's not simple in practice because, I mean, you actually have to do it. And I spent hours and hours I would search for production companies and contact them. And again, Craigslist is another great source for that. So there's not like a specific place you go for that. It's just you dig for them. And that's where you find them. I hope that's helpful. You mentioned the ISDN. How about Source Connect? Let me address that. I talk to engineers. Lately, I've been asking every studio that when I do an ISDN session, I ask them about the future of ISDN. And I don't work with all the studios in the world that use ISDN, so this is not scientific. This is just anecdotal. These are just my particular instances. But the studios, everyone that I've talked to said ISDN is still alive and well. And when I ask about Source Connect, they say that, at least the ones I work with, say no because they don't trust it. And it's not because they don't trust the software. They don't trust the internet. They don't feel, and I'm not saying this reflects the opinion of everybody. There are studios that do use Source Connect. And if there is a front runner in software for broadcasting voice over IP, then Source Connect is it. Though I don't use it. I use Audio TX, which is ISDN and voice over IP software program. But ISDN, even though it's a 1980s technology, is what recording studios use because they trust it. They've used it, and it works for them, and that's all they care. They just want something that they can rely on. When a client comes in and wants to do a recording session and they dial up a talent, they want to know it's going to work. And by and large, most studios trust ISDN. They do not trust. I won't say Source Connect. It has nothing to do with Source Connect. What they don't trust is voice over IP yet. That's coming. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's not a question of if. It's just a matter of when. So hang on for that. It'll be nice because it'll be way cheaper. I mean, ISDN's an investment, and even my investment paid off quickly with ISDN. I mean, I certainly made my money back and a lot more, but it's really started to pay off in this past 6 months because a number of my ISDN clients are now calling me more and more frequently as I develop relationships with their clients who like me and trust me. And now also these clients, these production companies, trust me because they've worked with me a number of times and know that I'm not going to make them look bad or waste their time or, that kind of. It takes a while to establish relationships. So I hope that's helpful, and I wish I had, it would probably take me another hour or two to go through all of these questions. And perhaps what we can do is schedule another time to just do kind of a question and answer thing. But I wanted to at least give you a framework to empower you to be able to problem solve, to be able to look at your business and say, okay, well, I know that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, these are all true. Therefore, I need to be doing A, B, C. And again, I've tried to give you some very specific steps that you can take. If it's overwhelming, just go back to step 1. Product precedes marketing. and start with that and examine your product and make sure your product is as good as it can be. And just work your way through those steps one by one. The key is to not give up. The key is to be persistent in developing your skills, in developing your marketing plan, and I'm living proof. I mean, I certainly don't consider myself anything overly special. I'm good. I have to be good to do what I do. Chances are you're good too. So beyond that, what comes after good? Well, it's having a good marketing plan and it's being persistent. There are plenty of people. There's always going to be somebody that's more talented than you, and I'm well aware of that. I mean, I have no delusions. There's always going to be somebody more talented than me. But I am competitive. I mean, I can compete in the marketplace. So I'm good enough. Now the question becomes, is my business plan good enough? Is my marketing plan good enough? And then the next question is, can I execute it consistently? And if I do, I have confidence and I've proven and I've shown that it works and it pays, and my income, as I mentioned, continues to rise and rise and rise. And if I keep it where it's been for this past 12 weeks, if I can continue that into 2012, I mean, it'll be a $200,000 a year. Now, whether that'll happen or not remains to be seen, but the past 5 years, I've not gone backwards, I've only gone forward. So I want the same thing for you. I want your business to grow. I want you to create an income that's stable, that is secure as it can be for being self-employed. And there's nothing more empowering or feels better than being self-employed than sitting in, I wish I could spend more time here in my family room. I work a lot, in my studio, but there's nothing like being able to come and go really as you want, to be able to choose how you market your business. It's hard to explain the feeling that goes with that, to being totally empowered, to make your own choices, to kind of plot your own destiny. And it is a wonderful, wonderful feeling. Thank you for your time. I wish you all the best in your voiceover business. I hope you know that, and I hope this has been of some help to you, and I hope you'll come back and refer to your notes often. And make sure that you stay in touch with me via voice-over-training.org, where I continue to post resources and information that will help you to grow in your voiceover business. God bless you. Have a wonderful holiday season, and I hope to talk to you real soon.